will study the last part of deadlock topic. That's a deadlock prevention. Okay, and recovery from deadlock. The recovery, there is nothing much, so I have not put in as a title of it. Okay, sources are the same. I have taken large part of the presentation from this, and also this is a nice book to consider. So these two are the ones which I have used. Of course, I have used part from this one. All right. So previous classes we have studied, there are 4 conditions that are needed. Bounded resources, or some authors write it as a mutual exclusion. It means that only one thread or one process at a time can use a resource. Okay, it means that no 2 threads cannot use a resource at a time, and it basically both comes out to the same thing. And of course, if there are finite number of resources, finite number of process, then deadlock can happen. Okay. Second is no preemption. It means once thread acquires a resource, ownership cannot be revoked. Okay. All right. Third is wait while holding, and fourth is circular wait. So we have studied all these 4, and these 4 are important because we have to recover from deadlock. Then we'll have to break at least one of these. Okay, so that's what we'll study today. And then we have seen this modeling of how processes are using resources as a graph, that we call it resource allocation graph. And we have seen using using cycles, we can discover there is a possibility of deadlock, but not necessarily always that if there is a cycle there is a deadlock, and we have seen that corner cases for that. Okay. All right, then we have looked at the Banker's algorithm, which is very simple algorithm that try to allocate resources to a process that can complete. We try to find out of many requests that are presented to OS picks up the one which can be met, and then hold others, and then when that resource are released from that process, then honor the second one whose resource request can be met, right? And so we have seen this very simple algorithm. That's how actually in real life, like you have there used to be concept of local merchant giving loan, right, or pawnbroker or something. So they exactly use this method, right? Okay, that's called Banker's algorithm. So today we'll see how to handle deadlock. All right, so these 2 approaches we'll look into. Okay, and very short. We'll today's lecture is very short because there's nothing much in these approaches. All right, so how should a system deal with deadlock? In general, we can see that first is deadlock avoidance, that we have already seen. Okay, we try, OS tries everything such that system doesn't get into deadlock state. Okay, so it means that use Banker's algorithm or use some other way so that it doesn't get into deadlock, or write program in such a way that it application programs are written in such a way that resource that we are asking happens in a way such that deadlock will not happen, right? Users can always write this if you have control over your resource request. Okay, however, there are multiple users, then you don't know what other users are asking for, and then OS has to take care of how to allocate resources to different processes corresponding to different users. Okay, so this we have seen in the last class. Okay, and then second is deadlock prevention. Okay, and third is deadlock recovery. So today we'll focus on these two. So deadlock prevention. So we have seen that deadlock avoidance is very hard. Okay, because it requires information about future resource requests. In Banker's algorithm, we need to know what are the resource requests that will come in. We need to know everything about the process, right? And that is not the case often. Okay. I mean, you are running, for example, an application program which is available to you in executable form. How do you know what are the resource requests it can make? I mean, not many applications will present this data to you. So future resource requests of processes is not easy to know. Now, if you are writing a dedicated program, for example, for missile firing or some other kind of hospital, for example, managing surgeries and so on, or some real-time application, then of course you have full control over system and full control over processes that you are writing. Program you're writing, then of course you can use this method. But in general, a server cannot know what kind of request will come in, right? So, or your laptops you suddenly start running a new process or new application, it may demand something which you yourself do not know. Okay, so if so, when you don't know how much resources a application will need during the lifetime, then the question is, how do we prevent deadlocks? Okay, now only way to do this is attack one of the 4 conditions, any one of the 4, right? And then these 4 conditions again we have seen are mutual exclusion or bounded resources, no preemption, wait while holding, and circular waiting. So let's take them one by one and see how can we handle deadlocks. So first is handle mutual exclusion or bounded resources condition. What is the solution? The resources can be infinite. We assume that resource is infinite. Then problem is gone. The example is virtual memory. How in virtual memory? In virtual memory, when we study it, we know that when you write program, it does not say your program cannot be longer than say 10 MB or whatever, right? Only condition that you have is right now, it should not be more than the address space. That's it. Okay, address space could be anything, 2 raised power 64, for example. Or nowadays we have even 128-bit processor, 2 raised power 120, which is huge. So 2 raised power 64 is very, very huge, and not that I don't think there are many programs or processes in general, not really program, but processes that can be have a code longer than that. Okay, so virtual memory gives you a feeling of infinite resources. Okay, for example, this problem that we have seen, allocate or wait 1 MB, and then again you have allocate or wait 1 MB, and we have 2 MB memory that we have studied, right? Then both are allocated 1 MB, then it gets into deadlock. So 1 MB comes here, 1 MB is given to this one, then this will wait for 1 MB and then get into whole system will get into deadlock state. Now, if you say there's no limitation of memory, right? Then of course most of the problem will go away. Not everything, but problem will go away here. Okay, all right. So virtual memory is one way which gives feeling of having infinite space that you have. All right. Okay. What is the other way? One we have seen, right? give infinite resources, which may not always be possible. Virtual memory is possibly one such example. Then what could be other thing? So second is that don't assign resources exclusively for single process. What we say here, a resource is given fully to a process. Okay, for example, we have a case of printer. Okay, now printer can be used by one process at a time. It's not that half page of one process will be printed and second remaining half page of second process can be printed, right? That's not the way printer works. So printers basically is non-shareable at this point in time, right? And when a process is using, let it print fully and then second process can start printing. So solution for that is that if this is a printer and now two processes we're trying to use is say P1, P2 and print document. Okay, and then obviously we can have situation here. Okay, so what we can do is that instead of this, we can have a print spooler here. And put a condition that the whole file first has got to come into the spooler. Okay, and then printing can start. Okay, so several processes now can generate output at a time. Okay, and the only process that actually requires a printer. Okay, so now what happens is that here the spooler has a daemon. Okay, and then that only can make a request. So basically, if I redraw it, so we have a printer. Now, if only one process uses it, doesn't matter, right? There is no such. So we can have a spooler which will have printer demo. So this demo actually can use this printer. That's it. That's all. And then it can interface with as many as. And then again, it has a condition, right? That whole file has got to be put into it. All right. Okay. Any question? So these are very intelligent things which a system does to avoid deadlocks. Okay, any question? No? What else? Does anything else comes to your mind? Can we have deadlock for say CPU? Anyone? Can we have a deadlock when different processes want the processor? Anybody? Okay, let me ask then. Okay. Meet Patel, you are there?
Yes, sir.
What did I ask?
Some if more than like processes have deadlock, like processes have deadlock.
Yeah, so okay, reframing it. When processes do run on processor, right? Or CPU or pipeline. And one pipeline can be used by one process at a time. So can there be deadlock for the use of processor or pipeline?
So we use preemption for a process. So
yes, very right. One of the conditions is preemption. There is no preemption. It's not. If process can hold the processor infinitely, or CPU infinitely, then of course you can say that there is deadlock. But in general, processor, there is always a preemption, right, after a clock tick. Okay, without that you cannot have a system because OS otherwise cannot run. Okay, so now you can say that yes, so you can say no, there won't be a deadlock. Okay, get it? Because preemption condition is negated here. Processors allow preemption. All right. Okay, let's move on. This method that we have seen, having a spooler, is not possible in all devices, right? So if that is so, then what should be the principle? Principle is that, or the approach should be that avoid assigning a resource unless it's absolutely necessary, and try to make sure that as few processes as possible may actually claim the claim the resource, not processor but resource. Okay. All right. So this is a condition. This is the approach that one can use. Okay. All right. So now let's move ahead to hold and wait. Let's attack this. It means that process is holding a resource allocated to it and waiting for more resources. Now what we can do now? Now we can be little, OS says that, so let all process, first method could be let all process request resources before starting. For example, you are doing malloc, then just as a simple example, then right in the beginning process should do that. So all the resources that it wants, say printer request or whatever it needs, it has to tell a priori. And then if everything is available, then OS can allocate that. Okay, but you know that this is not very practical until unless you design the whole system for a targeted application, you know everything. Okay, so this method is not a practical method. You may not know how many resources you need. In general, when you start a process, you don't know how many. When you start playing a video game, you don't know what is the memory requirement, what is CPU requirement, what is some other things it's using, and so on. So there's one problem you may not know. Second is that you are basically being very conservative in using resources, right? So a process may say that I need so much of resources, right? It is a maximum requirement that may have. So you are allocating it, and then of course because of that you are underutilizing it, because some time or other process may need that, but rest of the time is unused, right? So there is no optimal utilization. So this method is not very practical one. Second method is that back off and retry. It means that, okay, the process is requesting a resource first, and then first thing is that let it release the resource that is holding and then restart. So it's a backing off. It may take away the resources held by it and then restart. And if enough resources are there, and then reallocate. So if it happens to many processes together, then resources are available, and then one of the process is then given the resource. Okay. All right. So basically, if multiple processors are holding resources, and then it's causing deadlock, so or may cause deadlock, then OS may ask some processes to release the resource and enough resources are there, then give it to a process to complete. All right. So this is a method which is also doesn't sound very practical, right? And OS has to be extra smart for that. Next thing is that, you know, when somebody is requesting two resources, right, say X and Y, we are doing one by one. Okay, for example, some other process may request Y and X, and then deadlock could be there if both are assigned, first is assigned X and second assigned Y. So why not say that if assignment happens, assign all both together. Okay, so this we have seen. Okay, so a solution for this is that now this is causing deadlock because you know, Y is acquired by this, X is acquired, X is acquired by this, and so on. Then this cannot execute. Similarly, this cannot execute. So now one method is that instead of thread A requesting X and then requesting Y, request X and Y together. Okay, and similarly release them one by one. So what will happen is that if X and Y are both available, only then it will be given. So that then there is no deadlock. So for example, thread S is given X and Y, then thread B cannot, you know, this request will be denied. Okay, then there is no deadlock. Or we can do this one, right? So we can say that there is kind of create, you know, something. It's like a lock here. Okay, first and put a lock on Z, for example. Okay, so lock Z is there. If lock Z is acquired, then say X acquire and Y acquire, and then release, Z release. Now second thread also has got to do that, because once this lock is acquired, then of course it cannot request for Y and X. Okay, you got it? Any question?
No, sir.
All right. It's simple. And then next method is no preemption. Attacking no preemption will now allow preemption. What does it mean? I mean, can we always allow preemption? You know, it totally depends on what are you doing. Okay, so this is not a great option because the nature of device could be such that preemption is not possible. For example, again, the same thing as a printer, right? I mean, if you don't have spooler, you cannot do preemption here. The spooler was one method, the solution we have found, which is used, but you know, otherwise you cannot. So the many devices or resources are such that cannot be taken forcibly from a process or thread when they are doing the job. That's a halfway you cannot release the resources. Okay, so this is not a solution. And then fourth is that attack circular wait condition. Okay, so how do you attack circular wait? What happens in circular wait? Process selection P1, P2, P3, P4. So these are resources. One chopstick, whatever you can think of. Diners philosophy. So this guy requests this, but the one is held by P2. Similarly, this resource, P2 requests this resource, and this is held by P3, and so on. Okay, how do you break it then? How do you break it? Any thought?
So like give two forks to one of the floors.
Yeah, forcefully, right? Note that in general, in dynamic philosopher problem, what we are doing is actually a distributed algorithm, if you see it, right? You know, there's nobody can control these dynamic philosophers, right? Philosophers, they are autonomous process, independent process. So all of them have to use some protocol. Similarly, here, just think. See, now if the control is with, think of the situation here is happening in a in a processor, then of course OS is responsible, okay, for allocating resources. Then one simple thing is that, as you mentioned, then give the chopstick to forcefully take away chopstick or resource from a process, give it to the one who needs. Okay, so that's very simple. Okay. All right, so let's look at some of these. Okay, so process is okay. All right, the process is entitled to a single resource at any moment. If it needs a second one, then it has to release the first one. There's one solution. If you need more, then first give away the one that you're holding. But this is again not a great method, right? Because it's not always possible. For example, when you move a copy of huge file from tape drive to printer, okay, you're moving a huge file, which is maybe few gigabyte, from say printer, sorry, from a tape drive or tape to a printer. Then how can you release the tape until unless it's fully printed? Okay, because it will, the process may use, it cannot be printed. Printer cannot print the whole file in one instance, so it will get the data one by one and so on, right? And both resources are needed, so it cannot do that. So this method doesn't work. Okay, it may work in very simple cases, but not a great one. Now next is that do a global numbering of all resources. Okay, so you basically number them 1, 2, 3, 4 something. When we say global numbering is visible to all processes. Okay, the processes can request resources whenever they want to. All requests must be made in numerical order. What is the numerical order? Now this is the numerical order you fix to resources, and you say that, if process is requesting for say 3, resource number 3, then it cannot request 2, it cannot request 1, but it can request 4 or it can request 5. Okay, all right, so this is the example. Okay, so okay, taken from Tannenbaum's book. So basically you number this image setter, scanner, plotter, tape drive, CD drive as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the global numbers. Okay, so now when you say that a process needs 4, then process can of course is allocated, it is available, then it can make a request for CD-ROM drive 5. Okay, so there are two processes here, A and B. A is holding I and B is holding J, right? So deadlock can happen when A requests J and B requests I. Okay, so what can we do? If I is less than J, okay, then okay, so basically if deadlock can happen if B requests I, okay, holding J, it requests I and I is held by process A, Now, if I is less than j, then it will not be allowed. Okay, so B is not allowed to request for I, and vice versa. So by putting this condition, we break the cycle. All right, try this method and see if it works. Note the word here, B is not allowed to make a request for I. All right, so there you will find in books many variations of this, but the whole idea is to break this circular weight. Okay, and then try this and then see it works. So now what we have studied so far is the following. So all 4 deadlock prevention methods are, all methods are the following. First is break, attack, mutual exclusion or bounded resource problem by, we have seen that either you allocate infinite resources like in virtual memory, or give resources, infinite resources. Okay, or spool. Example, do some things very intelligently. Okay. Second is hold and wait. We need to attack this. And then basically one solution is a request of solutions, all resources initially, but that's also not a practical solution because it's very difficult to know the resource needs of a process right in the beginning, until unless you're designing very specific system for very targeted applications. Third is that attack, no preemption condition. By forcefully, you can forcefully take resources. OS can forcefully take resources back, and then restart and give it to a resource process that can whose needs are met. Right. So basically, you'll have to pull back and or back off and take the resource away and then give the resources back. And it's not really a great solution, but OS can do that. So many of these are very theoretical in nature. And then of course break this circular weight. And one solution of this, order resources numerically. Yeah, again, just breaking this cycle, right? All right. Okay. Any question? No?
No, sir.
All right. Okay. The last part of the talk today is that deadlock recovery. How do you break the deadlock? If deadlock has happened that when there are two trucks are blocking each other, or there we have seen this live lock, one this kind of something of this this kind, I think. How do you break it? Okay, how do you break it?
Someone
Such a
has to
deadlock, how
move
do you
back.
recover? Just
Restart.
yeah, restart. That's how we do. Sometimes our system is stuck. Now we don't know actually why system is stuck. There could be many reasons. Could be deadlock, could be deadlock happens very often in systems, right? But there could be many other ways. The system get frozen, when the screen gets frozen and nothing happens, right? So it could be because scheduling problem, starvation problem. But one way is that kill all that. It's very simple. And then restart. And note that deadlocks don't happen very often, right? Because now processes, these processes will be scheduled. Let's assume there are 4 processes, P1, P2, P3, P4, and each correspond to a resource. P1 here, P2 here, P3 here, and P4. When they start, the scheduler will schedule not necessarily in the same order in which it has done it previously. Okay, so there's very less likely that we'll get into deadlock state again. So there's one simple solution. Okay, all right. Okay, so basically deadlock recovery is that one deadlock happens and then OS has to figure out how to deal with it, how to recover from it. Okay. For example, terminate a thread, force it to give it a resource, right? I mean, here, instead of moving all trucks out, let's assume these are trucks blocking each other, and then killing all them or destroying all them, maybe one thing can be done is that just move one truck away with the crane or whatever, or kill one process. Then problem is solved, right? Okay, all right. So one solution is that in dining philosophy problem, you have suggested give chopstick to forcefully to the diner sitting next to the diner from you have taken chopstick. So that's a good solution. Second is that just to ask one philosopher to get out and make sure that he does not get out with a chopstick. Okay, so that's you kill one of the processes and then solution is there. In case of allocate and wait example, OS kills a process to free up some memory, right? When we assume that only 2 MB memory is there, just kill one, so memory is available now. But is killing good thing? Some process may be doing very important thing, right? So killing may always not be a good thing. Okay. For example, you kill a thread holding a lock. Okay, leaves a problem inconsistent. So there can be situation where killing a process is not a good thing. Okay, rollback is another option that we have seen earlier, right? Undo the transaction that has done, right? For example, it's a common technique in databases. Okay, transaction has been committed, then uncommitted, or it has reached to the stage of commitment, then roll it back. Okay. So, the idea is that when you restart, as we discussed earlier, once you have rolled it back, restart, there's a possibility. There's very small possibility then deadlock state will come until unless exactly same steps are taken. Okay, so very unlikely it will happen. Assuming that number of processes that are there in system is many, then very unlikely that same set of conditions will again come. Okay, all right. Okay. So another solution is that rather than killing a process, just remove the resources, preempt resources. So temporarily take away resources from a thread, but it has to fit into semantics of the process, right? If process semantics allows that in midway you can take away resources and holding the process and put the process in, say, with in suspended state or wait state, or don't schedule it, take the resources away and give it to other process, let it complete and give it back. Now if the semantics of that, the process, which is from whom the resource have been taken away, allows it, then you can do it, otherwise not, otherwise the result will be wrong. All right, so again, many of these are theoretical solutions. OS may employ in certain cases, may not, depending on the policy of OS and so on. All right, so that's all about what we had to study about deadlocks. Resource deadlocks can be avoided by keeping track of state which are safe and which are not safe. we are talking about avoidance. And we have seen Banker's algorithm. Or we can, deadlocks can be prevented by building a system such a way that deadlocks never occur, like the approach usually taken by Linux and many other systems. Okay. And there are some approaches for that. Of course, not maybe in some OS they are using it. So allowing this process to hold one resource at a time, resource deadlock and prevent a numbering that we have seen may not be used in Linux, but these are the methods. Okay, and when deadlock happens, then you can recover it by killing a thread or process, rolling back actions of deadlock thread or process and restart, or preempt resources or remove resources without killing thread or process if process semantics allows this. Okay, so these are the main methods. All right, so now, all right, so what we have covered so far in the course are, we can write it down somewhere. Okay, we can write it down here. We have covered so far what all we have covered and what we need to cover now. Okay, so we have, okay, we have started with, overall what OS does. OS gives us a virtual view. Okay, then we have look at threads, concept of threads and processes. Then what did we look at? We looked at concept of context switching. Okay, a dual mode of operation mainly. Then we have what was the next topic we covered?
Sir, IPC.
Inter-process communication. We have looked at then synchronization.
Scheduling.
Then we have looked at scheduling. And we have also looked at now deadlocks. A part of, kind of, you can think is part of, okay. And then we have already covered virtual memory in good detail and also cache memory, which is managed by OS. Hardware in general, I mean, cannot say, but in general, mostly concept of virtual memory and memory management. Now, what is left out now? Important topic we have not covered so far.
File system.
Yeah, so we'll take up now from next class onwards, file system. And once we complete that, if we have time, we will look at security. I mean, we'll look at in particular, not concept, broad concept on security, but I'll look at how OS provides security. Okay, OS provides security, right? Can you think of one simple mechanism that OS uses to provide security?
Sir, virtual memory platform.
Yes, virtual memory, very right, right? You can have access rights there, who can use different pages. You can also allow sharing using that, sharing in very controlled way. What else? The first concept of dual mode of operation itself, okay, itself allows secure system, right? Security. Okay, then we have studied the concept of system calls. Okay, system calls is only way of getting into OS space. Okay, so lot of operations the processor, normal processor not allowed to do. They're writing into, for example, into a device. Okay, or so all this is controlled by OS. Okay, that is another mechanism, right? That users are allowed to access, sensitive resources or maybe other things only through these well-defined system calls. What else where you think that security comes into picture? Scheduling, for example, is the users are not allowed to control how scheduling works. Okay, users can only request for priority, or process can give priority, but ultimately it's controlled by OS kernel. What else? Just think about it. I am also thinking. It's not that I have studied this in great detail. See, we can also provide some kind of access rights. Okay, many things we have not studied. For example, login process. Okay. Okay, and different files we will study that have different access rights. I mean, we have seen that some files can be just read, some can be written, some can be executed. Okay, and so on. Okay, question to you, since you have done networking course, how do you secure internet?
Encrypt the data before sending.
Very good. Encrypt the data, because internet doesn't provide security. It doesn't. It's a pipe. It's just a plain pipe. A water pipe or whatever pipe is a hose pipe, and whatever you put at the other end, it comes out at the other end. And that's the beauty, and that's the power. And that's the flexibility. That's the reason it is the most important communication technology happened in last maybe whatever 200-300 years. Just look at the beauty of that. It's just beautiful. Millions of applications you can develop, and it does not say don't develop it. I cannot run your application. Unlike, for example, PSTN network. PSTN network is extremely secure. Very, very secure. I mean, you can never hear conversation of some other person. A dedicated path is created for you in traditional PSTN system. There is signaling protocol SS7 that is extremely secure, and that creates a path for you all along, reserving resources exclusively for your call. But can we use PSTN network for browsing? No. Can I use it for watching videos? No. Okay. So this is the power of internet, that it does not provide any security. It does not provide too many controls. It tries to emulate, functionality of a pipe. And then whatever you put at the end, whether it's encrypted data or is a music or whatever, it goes to other end. And now semantics or protocol at both ends need to interpret what is done. If both understand the same language, same semantics, like one end is just sending Chinese, other end can understand Chinese, is done. Okay, all right. So that's all for today. Thank you. See you on Tuesday.